You just touched on it. They've got a couple of things going for them that are really, I think, going to be on display for the nation tomorrow against the Giants. And first and foremost, you hit it, that the offensive line is a young line. And, Q, you've been around the game long enough to know that the best way to get an offensive line some kind of continuity and unity as a front is to run the football. I mean, this is something that every offensive lineman is good at some point in their career, probably going back to college. Pass blocking is a little different, and I think that's where, the team has kind of, I don't want to say they've nursed Kirk Cousins here, but they've kept him from having to drop 40 times a game.
Right,
yeah, he had a game where he passed for 30-something times,
right.
But their pass game is very, quick 10-yard passes here or there, kind of like the Patriots. It's almost like a running game in itself. So they look pretty good right now. And defensively, Joe Barry, new defensive coordinators, come in and brought an aggressive unit, and they're a lot of fun to watch right now. They really are.
You touched on Kirk Cousins not having to drop back, 30, 40-odd times. And look, I mean, I think Kirk Cousins I think he's a backup quarterback. But I think in the right system, when things go well for him, and he can simplify the game. You look at that game tomorrow night, not only is the defense a little more juiced of late for Washington, but you mentioned that ground game. The Giants are pretty weak, especially the front four. They can't get to the quarterback. I think if he has time to throw tomorrow, they might stretch the field a little bit, and I certainly think they're going to run the football. What's interesting is you have this banner going back between him and RG3. Let me clarify that. There are reports of banter between him and RG3 going back and forth here and there, yada, yada, yada. I'm just curious. You guys, and you were one of them, and you felt that if RG3 was healthy, there was a chance that he was going to get traded. I want to ask you two questions, if I can. Now that Romo goes down, even though they signed a veteran quarterback, was there any talk about the Skins trying to move RG3? Did Dallas even call up Washington at all and inquire about RG3, to your knowledge?
Yes and no. I actually mentioned it myself a couple of days ago, that I would not be surprised if there was a call made. But you have to understand, Cowboys are 2-0 still. Regardless of Romo being hurt and Des Bryant being hurt, they're 2-0. They still feel good about their season. They believe in Brandon Whedon. At least they're saying that publicly. Listen, there's no way the Redskins would have pulled the trigger on that, feeling like they have a chance to do something this season now, because you're basically giving a guy to a division rival who, again, is 2-0. You just can't make that move. I wouldn't have been surprised if it, had gone down, if the Redskins were struggling, if it was a problem. Well, the other thing, too, to refute this whole report, and the guy Cole that wrote this is a really good writer. He really is, for Bleacher Report. However, there's no truth to that, and I'm not sure where he got that from. I just don't believe it. I've talked to some guys in the locker room. I know several of those guys, and there's no truth to that. At least they didn't think there was any truth to that. And just yesterday at practice, at the end of practice, every day now for the last 2.5 weeks, Robert has stayed out on that field for about an hour. I mean, by himself and a trainer. And over the couple of days, I've seen some other players start to stay out there too.
Okay.
And they're not on the other side of the field. They're with him. And yesterday, lo and behold, two of the guys that were out there with him and a couple of receivers, and Jordan Reed, the tight end, was out there, was Robert, Colt McCoy, and the starter, Kirk Cousins. So, I will say this, Q, the national media has decided over the years that the Redskins are a target because of some bad business that they've brought on themselves. But a lot of the stuff that's coming out now is really bad journalism. It's just not true.
Let's well, I mean, look, that happens a lot. I mean, a lot of times, people want to be first to report. They want to be first to the story, and sometimes they just kind of throw it against the social media wall or the refrigerator and see if it sticks. And more times than not, it doesn't. And that's the kind of world we live in, unfortunately.
Sure.
But that being said, look, when you look at the NFC East as a whole, You mentioned the Cowboys are 2-0. Washington's 1-1. The Eagles are 0-2. The Giants can't close a game. They're 0-2. I want to get the thought, because where you are, obviously it's a big football town, big football area, and I'm sure they're just loving the fact that the Giants are 0-2 and the Eagles are 0-2. From those that you deal with and talk to, what's the perception down in D.C. on the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that the Washington Redskins will see fairly soon? But what's the overall? They'll see them right after the Giants game. So what's the national perception from your backyard on the Birds?
A little bit of shock. I mean, because they look pretty good in the preseason, and obviously that tells you can't put too much into the preseason. I work with a gentleman that, well, I don't work with him. He's a colleague of mine down here, does some great reporting on his own right, but he's from Philadelphia, and he's an Eagles fan, diehard. And the way he was talking after the preseason was if the Eagles were going straight to the Super Bowl, and I had to forewarn him. It's the preseason. You haven't seen everything yet, and it's going to be some growing pains when you bring in all this talent. Yeah. The Eagles have a lot of talent. You can't buy a Super Bowl. You've got to put it together. And I think you're seeing right now that they haven't closed out some games. They just haven't played well for 4 quarters. They looked really good at times against Atlanta, but they looked bad at times too. So someone asked me yesterday, I had a TV appearance yesterday, and one of the questions was, who wins the division? And I actually said the Philadelphia Eagles, and he said they're 0-2. I said there's just too much talent on that team for them not to turn it around. I still feel like they're going to win the division, but I also think the Redskins are going to be a wild card team out of that division.
Wow. Based
off of what I've seen so far.
It's amazing, 2 games into the season, the huge difference between 0-2, 1-1, and 2-0. And that in a nutshell is just kind of how it's going to shape out. I mean, 8-8, 9-7 can certainly win that division. Sure. Before I let you get here, just a couple quickies for you. Washington played the Rams. I'm just wondering, what was your overall take on Nick Foles?
I thought he struggled. I really did.
Defensive scheme, schematically, or?
When he has heat coming at him, he's not the same player. And we saw this in Philly. When he had time to sit back there and survey the field, the guy can make every throw in the league. I mean, every throw a quarterback has to make, he can make. And I guess you can say that about any quarterback. If they're under duress, they're just not going to look as well. But specifically with him, he just doesn't seem like he's surveying the field. He sees one side of the field when you bring pressure at him, and it's caught up a little bit there. He did not look good at all. And I don't want to take away from the Redskins' defense because they played extremely well.
Sure.
But I'm not sure the Rams are a Super Bowl quote-unquote contender with him as their quarterback. And I know it's early, but I don't see it.
This was the point I made, and again, a couple minutes with Lake Lewis on this Wednesday. I thought, first of all, my gut actually, not that it matters, I thought they were going to beat Seattle. I thought they were going to get a big win against Seattle, and I thought Foles was going to have a good season. I also looked at the game against Washington. I said, here's a young team, different system, good defensive players in St. Louis. You got a new quarterback under there. If you go on the road, and this is when, let's be honest, a lot of people weren't thinking too highly of Washington, even after week one. If you can go on the road, that tells me you're ready to play winning football. And I can start to maybe say this is a team on the rise. It didn't pan out like that. And obviously I still think St. Louis is going to play competitive football. Seattle's got a bunch of issues going on, especially even though Chancellor comes back. I want to get your thoughts, and then I want to ask you one quick hoops question before I let you get out of here on Moses Malone. But when you look at Chancellor, in my mind, I think it's Bush League that you have 3 years left on a contract and you want to renegotiate the contract. I just think I saw this coming with Seattle. After they win the Super Bowl, guys want to get paid. I get it. But that's a contract you signed. Honor that contract. Play out the contract. That's how I feel on Chancellor. And quite frankly, is he going to make that much of a difference? I think it goes deeper than just having him back with some of their troubles this year. And I think they're really in trouble.
Yeah, two things there. One of the things you said about Foles and the Rams is exactly what I said about the Redskins. We're going to find out about this team tomorrow night.
Yep.
If you beat a wounded Giants team, the talk could become real here, that maybe this team snuck up on some people. But if you go to New York, a place where you've had a house of horrors over the years, Odell Beckham Jr. torched them last year. If they go up there and lay an egg, then they're going to be the Redskins. They're going to be the team people expected, and there's going to be a circus when I come back from New York to work. So it's going to be crazy. But to go forward about the Cam Chancellor thing, I didn't like what he did either. I thought he signed the contract. I do think that there's a little sticky point about that contract, and it wasn't the fact that he was trying to get more money. He was trying to move money up from the third part of the third year, to kind of move it forward into the contract, which in a sense is still, complaining about a contract you signed. So I don't think Seattle has that fear factor anymore. Nope. You saw that division with the Rams, with the Cardinals, who no one's talking about, that look really good. They all those teams, San Francisco now, they've all built themselves to battle Seattle and be physical like them. And I just think that there's no wow factor anymore with Seattle. And now you're starting to see an offense that really has been limited. Yep. I know they brought in Jimmy Graham, but they don't have anyone on the outside that makes any opposing defense really feel like, we're in trouble here. So they're taking away the run. They're daring Russell Wilson to throw to some guys that really, frankly, haven't been getting it done.
Yeah, and Graham's probably looking at himself, oh, my goodness, what I get myself into. Got about a minute before I let you get out of here. I know you're a hoops guy. I know you cover the NBA. I know you cover the Wizards. Moses Malone, I wanted to do a little more of a retrospect, but passed about a week or so ago. When you're a hoops guy, when you look at Moses Malone, I consider him the greatest offensive rebounder. And I know Olajuwon early in his career gave Malone fits, but I can also turn around and say, hey, Artis Gilmore used to kill Bill Walton when they played. When you look at a guy like Moses Malone, how do you kind of encapsulate his career?
I actually say that Moses Malone may have been one of the more underrated players of all time. I'm talking dominant players, and for people in that market, they'll know that the team that won the championship in 82, 83, if I'm not mistaken, that for per single season, I would put that team up against any NBA championship team, because that team had everything, and it started underneath with Moses Malone, who not just was a great and feared defender and rebounder, but the guy would drop 30 on you at the same time while he was getting 20. Yep. So that's a tough loss for Philadelphia and for the NBA family as a whole. You guys have kind of had a tough go of it, even with Daryl Dawkins, right? A couple of weeks.
Caldwell Jones as well. So, yep, Caldwell Jones.
Absolutely. So, hallmarks of those great Sixers teams at the Spectrum. I remember Moses Malone growing up, and my father used to always tell me that Moses Malone and it's funny you say that, Hakeem Olajuwon, perhaps are the two greatest centers that don't get talked about, with the Chamberlains and Russells and, Abdul-Jabbars, those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, always a pleasure, my friend. I'm up against it. Enjoy the game on Thursday. I'm sure I'll get a text message or two during the game on Friday as I do a postmortem on the Giants.
All right. I'll be up there tomorrow. We'll see what happens.
All right, my friend. All right, be well. I appreciate it.